Very interesting question. He's saying, don't you feel that the private sector is responsible for today's situation? Because as against the Indian private sector, who is very vocal, Sri Lankan private sector does not um, voice their concerns, just like other private sector entities do in other countries, which is one reason as to why the politicians take the upper hand. Your view?
I think they're quite right. In fact, I got an article going on my computer right now asking the question, why is the big private sector silent on big issues, right? They make kind of pompous statements on the budget or something like that, but they're not getting involved in the key issues, right? On any key issue. The private sector is not saying in loud, clear voice that PTA must be banned. They're not saying that. They're not really saying anything about corruption. So I was wondering why this is, and you were asking why is the difference between the Indian and the Sri Lankan. And I was scratching my head, and I thought perhaps one of the reasons is some of the pioneers of the private sector, the big people there, are now getting on in years. Some of the big players are probably reaching the 80s. Mr. Dilma, Mr. Fernando is 90, Harry Verma is 80. So this is the problem. I think we have an aging leadership in the private sector, and a more dynamic younger generations have not taken over. And all they're doing is focusing on running their businesses, and they're not playing their wider role in society. But the comment is very valid. They are not saying anything about anything. They haven't even said that we should do away with the Prevention of Tourism Act. They're not making any comment. They're not putting any pressure. If I was a leading private sector in the private sector, I would say, you should do this. If you don't do this, we won't pay tax. That's the biggest threat they can make. That if they're not going to be responsive, that we threaten not to pay tax. Of course, we'll pay a tax, but at least it will make them sit up and think that there are people who can actually have some impact on the activities of the government.
So as and when we have students coming in, let us start off the day. So let me warmly welcome on behalf of APIT, Asia Pacific Institute of Information Technology, all dear students who are joining our new semester, fresh students who are joining us to start your postgraduate journey with APIT along with Staffordshire University. And it is indeed such an honor to be having so many VIPs, I would say, special guests today with us who are going to be wishing you, who are going to be inspiring you and motivating you to start your studies with that well wishes that you always deserve to have. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about, as Asia Pacific Institute of Information Technology in Sri Lanka, we have been working and we have been supporting students for a little over 2 decades in seeding professionals in the fields of law, business, and computing, where we are inspiring love. And of course, where we are inspiring your inspiration for you to continue your studies with love and care. So as a new beginning, as we have all the new fresh students here who are joining us, let me warmly welcome them officially on behalf of Student Services. At the same time, let me also welcome all our students who are joining from existing cohorts for you to be listening to a well-known distinguished guest whom we have today as well. So with that, let me now cordially invite Dr. Rohan Tathakorala, Director of APIT Sri Lanka, at the same time the pioneering personality for postgraduate school, to start over with the session with his welcome. Dr. Rohantha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kaushali, and it's actually an honor for me to speak today in front of my former boss, one of the most respected personalities in Sri Lanka. Welcome to all the undergrads and the graduates who are listening to us. And it's great that you all have decided to do your masters. Then I also like to very, very special warm welcome to Dr. Bharati, who helps us a lot from Staffordshire University and of course, all my colleagues and fellow faculty members. Sri Lanka is at crossroads. We know that things are very volatile, but a point that we have to keep in mind is it's not only Sri Lanka, but so many other countries around the world are faced with similar challenges. We've seen a very volatile environment happening in the UK, where we've seen the Prime Minister changing. I think shortest Prime Ministers that we have seen in office in the UK. And I mean, it's happening all over the world. So in this chaos, I think the only thing that's going to keep us alive happens to be how we can understand theoretical concepts, understand best concepts, and ask ourselves which are the ones that we can use in terms of helping each of our countries to fight back, each of our companies to fight back, and see how to keep our consumers happy. So that's the kind of challenge that we are faced with. And I think whilst from a business side, we are very strongly challenged, from an academic side, it's one of the most important times where you can actually use this time to study, get yourself equipped with the knowledge that you need to have to run tomorrow's organizations, to understand what's happening out there in the world, so that we will be ready for the kinds of volatility that we see in the future. A classic example, if IMF, now most of us may have studied IMF from a very academic point of view, but today we find that we are very close to this institution, and we have studied the kinds of loans that they have given, the bailout packages they are given to maybe about 25 to 26 countries for the last maybe 15, 20 years. We have seen how some countries have got bailout packages of 3 and 4, and on what criteria they have been given, and how you need to prepare yourself for that. And you suddenly find that these are certain concepts that would have been so far away, but now we have to learn to understand these kinds of institutions and the role that they play for us in business. So I think it's a beautiful time to study. It's a time which really helps us to think back, ask ourselves what went wrong into Sri Lanka, what went right for Sri Lanka, ask ourselves how organizations must fashion to the changing climates, and see how we can engage the world. So it's a brilliant opportunity that we have got, and I think we have to make the best of it in the next 1.5 years of study that we will come under. So whilst thanking you once again for joining today's program, and of course deciding to study for your own betterment, I'd like to welcome every one of you. Kaushali, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohantha. So that is Dr. Rohantha Tukorala, one of our directors at APIT Sri Lanka, and who is going to be one of the amazing teachers you will be meeting once in a while in the postgraduate studies as well. So with that, let me now warmly welcome Dr. Bharati Singh, representing Staffordshire University, to address all our students. Dr. Bharati, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kaushali. So, dear students, welcome to APIT Lanka and the Staffordshire Business School. This is your staff's MBA. So the history of the MBA goes back to 1908, when the first MBA program was launched. at the Harvard Graduate School of Business Administration. It had only 15 faculty members and 80 students. Since then, the MBA has taken the world by storm. Today, the marketplace is swarmed by a range of MBA offerings, but your MBA has been specifically designed to meet the challenges of today. It develops your management and leadership competencies. It develops your strategic agility, organizational agility, customer focus, drive for results, and most importantly, your career ambition. As all paths to career advancement rely on prudent development of these key competencies, every single one of your MBA modules are mapped to these competencies. So what is the objective of the MBA? The objective of the MBA is to enable students to deal with real-world issues of management and leadership within the intellectual and challenging environment of Staffordshire University Business School. It will enable students to develop key competencies, providing the ability to apply contemporary techniques for decision making. The world is moving continuously, rapidly. So what do we want? We want our students to develop contemporary techniques for decision making in complex situations that managers face today. Leaders across a wide range of industry and business sectors that they face today in this very, very dynamic business world. The principal approach to your studies is PPBL, which is problem and practice-based learning. All the students will engage in learning and learn and become increasingly reflective learners through adoption of this problem and practice-based learning philosophy. And this will again help develop your key management and leadership competencies. All the MBA students will work collaboratively with each other and with teaching staff, thus tackling real-world and authentic problems, allowing development of skills. Focus on PPBL will lead students to be capable, independent learners. For you to understand what are the key issues that are relevant to organizational business. The staff teaching on the MBA, they have a wide range of experience, both research and professional practice. They create authentic, valid, and challenging learning experiences throughout your MBA journey. But it is also expected you, the MBA students, will come from a wide range of backgrounds and hence will possess a wide range of skills and competencies, plus may have additional expectations at the start of their study. So the aim is to work in partnership with the MBA students to ensure all students are continuously challenged, whilst being provided with the required support to enable success. This is the teaching and learning strategy at Lanka and at Staffordshire University. Challenges facing managers and leaders have to continue to undergo significant change. The key associated competencies that you will continue to learn, these are required to support continued career development in an increasingly competitive and dynamic environment. So it is not sufficient only to understand what is theory. What are the techniques? No, that does not suffice in its own. Critically successful managers and leaders must possess the required competencies together with an understanding of contemporary business issues and risks to succeed. This postgraduate award, your MBA, the staff's MBA, has been designed to offer those either in on embarking on careers in management or leadership, or for those who are already there it will give you the opportunity to succeed. The flexible nature of the award allows the opportunity to explore specific aspects of business, to tailor the overall award to individual career plans. It is a combined theory and practitioner approach to teaching and learning that supports the shaping of this contemporary MBA curriculum that embeds the desired professional and practitioner ethos, focusing on employability and continuing professional development in the field of management and leadership. Employers will recognize that Staffordshire University MBA students are better equipped to enter the world of work and or make a greater contribution to their current roles. The aim of this award has been derived from and mapped against the national benchmark standards of Masters Business and Management Awards, which were developed taking into consideration guidelines and position papers at the master's level by EQUAL, which is the European Quality Link. Detailed learning outcomes for all modules are given in the module descriptors, which are easily available to all our students. So, what are our expectations? We have high expectations of both our MBA candidates and of our staff. All candidates are expected to actively contribute to the MBA journey by sharing your experience, expertise, questions, answers, and most importantly, the hunger for knowledge. You never stop to learn till the end of your life, till the last day of your life, till the last breath that you have. So this hunger for knowledge, development, and success. Our staff all have industry experience and have published research expertise that adds direct value to the modules they deliver, and they're expected to challenge you and your comfort zone. You are not expected to sit down and relax. No, you're expected to be in the driver's seat. It is your MBA. And if you find your MBA easy, then we, the staff, have not done our job. So this is your MBA, and it'll be good that you are willing to make it. As good as you're willing to make it. Together, we are co-producers of the staff's MBA. Be prepared for a challenge, as the pace will be fast and the expectations high. Your MBA is delivered through problem practice-based learning, where real and live organizational issues, challenges, and problems are discussed in search of solutions. In this way, we seek to prepare you for a more onerous management and leadership challenges in whatever comes next in your career. This preparation is key to your individual career aspirations and hence career advancement and employability. We are here to help you through your studies, and you're here to challenge and support each other. We hope you have an enjoyable and rewarding journey with us. For and on behalf of the MBA team at Lanka and Staffordshire Business School, all the very best. Thank you. Over to you, Kushali.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bharati. It was indeed such an amazing opportunity to have you here with us today. And thank you so much for your encouraging words. I'm sure it will stand as a motivation and an inspiration for our students who are starting their new journey of MBA, MSc, and LLM with Appit Sri Lanka, with, of course, with the academic and all the other support that is coming in from Staffordshire University. With that, let me now invite Dr. Rohan Thatukorala back again to introduce our speaker for the day with the official introduction and to start off the webinar for the session. Dr. Rohantha, over to you.
Thank you, Kaushali. I think we have one of the most distinguished personalities in the last 100 MBA diaries that we have staged. A Masters of Arts degree from the Cambridge University, UK, and advanced management practice from Harvard Business School, USA, accounting for almost 40 years of board experience, having served as the director of several companies in Sri Lanka and abroad. He has served most of his career at ReckittBenckiser PLC, UK, and was the main board director, the first Sri Lankan to be on a top 100 company in the UK. He was the global director of pharmaceuticals at the ReckittBenckiser UK when he retired. So we have an outstanding human being, a brilliant mind who really has shaped many of our careers, who will be our keynote speaker today. He has not only been the Sri Lankan hitting the top 100 companies, but also he has been selected by numerous occasions by the government of Sri Lanka to serve as the chairman of the Board of Investment, chairman of Sri Lanka Telecom, and he was also the senior advisor, Ministry of Finance, um, in terms of being the chair for the tourism cluster of the National Council for Economic Development. And I used to meet him so often when I was executive director of the National Council for Economic Development, and his words of wisdom on driving the tourism industry during tough times was, really out of the box. Um, he also has a he was also held many directorships in many other companies, and is a trustee of the Cambodia Trust UK, and also served ReckittBenckiser Brazil and chairman of Hemas Holdings in his outstanding professional career, where he built this beautiful company of Hemas and took it to the stock exchange. And real fantastic guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the first Sri Lankan board director in a top 100 UK company, board director ReckittBenckiser UK, former chairman board of investment Sri Lanka Telecom, former chairman Hemas Holdings, Deshamanya Lalith De Mel, who will talk to us about when will Sri Lanka recover. And he's the only kind of personality who can talk on this subject. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lalith De Mel. So over to you.
Thank you, Rohantha, for those words of introduction. Rohantha, of course, is an old friend. I've known him for many years. So thank you very much for those kind words. I must congratulate Bandula Ebotage and his team at APIT for their valuable contribution to education in Sri Lanka. What a wonderful thing to be able to do an MBA or an MSc. And this is a wonderful contribution to development in Sri Lanka by APIT, by making it possible for people here to do an MBA or MSc in collaboration with some brilliant British universities. Dr. Athakorale, when he invited me to speak today, suggested that I share some thoughts on a road to recovery. That's an interesting subject, the road to recovery. And I will share some thoughts, my thoughts on the road to recovery. It's going to be a hard journey, and there are going to be some hard decisions to make. But it's a subject we should all think about, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to express some of my thoughts on the road to recovery. Any concept of recovery must start with a view of the crisis in all its dimensions. You must understand completely what the crisis is all about. And then you must form a view and an understanding of who put us in this situation and how they did it. So if you have those three pieces, that's very helpful. It provides the guidance on looking for a solution and a road to recovery. Our crisis is quite simply due to two things. No rupees to meet government expenditure and no foreign exchange to meet all our requirements for it. We need rupees for all sorts of things. We need rupees to pay salaries of government servants. We need rupees to meet all the costs of state-owned enterprises, including some mega loss-making ones like Sri Lankan Airlines. We need rupees to meet the cost of all the services the state provides, education, health, etc. We need rupees to meet the huge cost to maintain our armed services. We have to keep them marching under the blare of trumpets, pum, 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 pum. We have to keep them going, the army. And that costs a huge amount of money. Now, as we do not have enough tax revenue to meet these costs, we have a huge crisis. That's the problem. As some services cannot be provided. That's the crux of the problem now. And that's what is causing the agitation, because we don't have enough money to provide all the services that people are used to and should have. In addition to a rupee problem, we do not have enough foreign exchange to meet all our needs of foreign exchange. Now, we need foreign exchange for a number of things. We need it to import essential food and essential medicines. We need it to import fertilizer. We need it to import petrol, diesel, kerosene. We need foreign exchange to import the essential inputs for our export industries like apparel. All these export industries have an input of raw materials, some of which have to come from abroad, and they need foreign exchange for that. And we need foreign exchange to repay our loans and to pay interest on these loans. And we need foreign exchange to redeem our sovereign bonds. So you see, the foreign exchange scenario is quite complex. We need foreign exchange for a number of things, including for paying our loans. Now, the key question is, how did we end up in this very difficult situation of no rupees and no foreign exchange? That's the crisis. I mean, some time ago, not so long, maybe a year ago, we never dreamt that we will end up in a situation where there's no petrol and people don't have access to medicines. This is unheard of. We thought we were sailing along brilliantly. The answer is straightforward why we are in this crisis about rupees. That's easy. The government did not control its rupee expenditure, and it didn't increase its tax revenue, so you have a crisis. That's a fairly straightforward thing of why we have the crisis with rupees. The government was very lethargic in its approach. It did not take a red pencil and strike out many items of expenditure. It did not do the obvious thing to sell loss-making state enterprises. Yeah. So that's a huge cost, just loss-making state enterprises. But it was lethargy of the government. We didn't do anything to sell them, get rid of them, or transform them into profitable enterprises, which is going to be a hard task. Now the government has to get off its butt and reduce expenditure. And the government should also increase taxes and increase government revenue. It has got to do these two things. There is no option. Reduce expenditure, increase tax revenue. So the rupee problem is managed, but we need strong leadership to explain the true position to the people. If we don't, we will have uprisings, chaos all over the place. The people must understand really what is the crisis. Why can't we provide some of these services? They must understand that. So that's what we need. So what do we need? We need strong leadership to explain the true position of the people and the urgent need to cut costs and increase taxes. But if we don't have strong leadership, we'll get nowhere. Now the problem is, this means having to say to people, the government having to say to people, that we were incompetent. And the difficult issue is, can those guilty stand up and take the blame? That's a difficult thing. That's a difficult thing. Somebody has to come out and say, right, we made mistakes. I don't think that's an easy task. I don't think that'll happen that way. So that is why elections and a new government is necessary and must be seen as an essential action in the road to recovery. You have to facilitate the road to recovery. And one of the major inputs of facilitation would be to have election and to have new government and new people. We don't have to carry the burden of their omissions and errors of the past. Now, the foreign exchange scenario is much more complex. We have to carefully utilize the foreign exchange we get from exports, inward remittances, and tourism. We did not carefully utilize our foreign exchange. We had reserves of $7 billion when Kota became president, and not enough left to buy petrol when he left. And right up to the end, we're importing various things. We have imported Nescafe, cheese, we're importing cars, we're carrying on as if we had a bottomless pit of foreign exchange. So we're guilty of not managing our foreign reserves. So when we are short of foreign exchange, a normal instinct is to see we should borrow some foreign exchange. What's the problem? I'll borrow some money, money. Sadly, that was not possible. We had extensively used sovereign bonds to borrow. These bonds had to be redeemed at par on stipulated dates, and we were not in a position to do this. And therefore, we cannot borrow anymore. So the only option was to go to IMF. Now, they look carefully at the state of the economy before providing any funds. They're not like Santa Claus, Apple is just handing it out. They look carefully and they ask you to take certain corrective measures before they give you any money. So a major issue that they pointed out was the need to come to some agreement with our creditors and to restructure the debt. We have a huge mountain of debt. A large part of this debt was taken by Mahinda Rajapaksa and his government to finance projects like the Hambantota port, the Mattala airport, the new phases of the Southern Highway, Surya River, cricket grounds, Nelumpokana, and God knows what else. Now, in business, when we invest in a product, we normally expect a payback in 5 years. Now, the key feature of all these big projects is that there's no likelihood of a payback even in 100 years. Worse still, they do not generate any income in foreign exchange now. The big question is, why did the Rajapaksas do this? Why did they take huge loans knowing that we could not repay these loans or pay the interest on these loans? Were they plain stupid? Or was there some other motivation? I don't know. We can all speculate on what the motivations are. But there is no argument against the fact that it's a stupid thing to do, to take loans that you can't repay and then you can't pay the interest either. So the most important point of this road of recovery, taking this background, is to create confidence in the political structure. We need to convince the world that we have largely eliminated corruption. Everybody associates corruption with Sri Lanka. They know that. We have rampant corruption. So we need to convince the world that we have eliminated corruption largely, that the rule of law prevails and human rights are respected. Without achieving this, it will be very difficult to get agreement on restructuring debt or even to get modest help from friendly countries. I don't think this can be achieved by the SLPP government. The SLPP government created these problems. The SLPP government allowed corruption to be rampant. Now, would we believe them if they say, no, we're changing, we washed our faces and we're different people? I don't think that would fly. Therefore, the road to recovery means the election, and we need new people at the helm to take us on the road to recovery. Now, to solve our foreign exchange problem, we are fortunate to have some excellent candidates to solve the problem for us. We have a robust export sector. Where traditional tea, rubber, and coconut continue to make a valuable contribution. The new apparel sector is a star, and a number of other industries are now making a contribution. Gems and jewelry exports are going well. We have two other potential big winners in mineral sands and plumbago. We also have a raft of small exporters doing well, like cut flowers, ornamental fish, handicrafts, batiks. We are blessed with a strong hand in exports. IT can become a large contributor. IT is a huge contributor to the Indian economy, and that illustrates the potential for countries like Sri Lanka to be a major player in providing IT services. And when just before COVID, I think they were expecting to do $2 billion. However, the real winner for Sri Lanka can be tourism. We are still a very small player in a huge market. We're edging up to 1 million, and we have the infrastructure already for 3 million tourists. To crank up enthusiasm for tourism, we must remember that Thailand has about 40 million tourists, and Malaysia has 30 million plus. We have all the attributes that will enable us to grow and grow in tourism. it is one sector that can also generate inward foreign investment. However, there is a problem. A huge drain of people, real brain drain. People are leaving, running away to the Maldives, the Middle East. Hopefully, we can send the right signals soon. No Rajapaksas, no corruption, and the crisis is being overcome, and hope it will reduce the people living in Sri Lanka. But that is essential. If we don't have people, we can't exploit this wonderful opportunity of developing tourism. Other than tourism, it is difficult to see the scope to devise a strategy based on inward investments to set up manufacturing activity in Sri Lanka. We do not have any exceptional advantage over what there is in neighboring countries. In addition, we have the negative. We have a reputation of having corrupt politicians. Taking the two together, we must reluctantly conclude that inward investment as a strategy will not fly. We have the Port City Brigade. We are trained to sing a chorus about a wonderful thing the Port City is, and by creating an offshore financial center. I think they should pause and wonder whether anybody will send their dollars for safekeeping to Sri Lanka in the context of our current economic situation. So that's Port City. That's the thing from the hymn sheet, but that's not going to fly. However, there's one possible exception for inward investment, and that's the Tamil diaspora should be encouraged to invest. I'm sure they still have strong emotional links and would consider making investments in the North and East. We should persuade the diaspora to invest. In conclusion, I would say the most important step in the road to recovery is to get rid of corrupt politicians who have created all our problems with loans we cannot pay, and give space and support to our current export industries, and always give prime priority to tourism, which is what can transform the country and the well-being of our people. I think we can recover in 2 years through our exports. We have a wonderful battery of export products, and I'm sure they will see us through this crisis. But new people, a new government to create the environment that will enable us to recover from the crisis and march to prosperity is essential. So to get new government and new people, the key requirement now is a new election. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Crystal clear as usual. I remember the brand marketing days at ReckittBenckiser, and making presentations to you, very, very crystal clear in the thinking on what brand Sri Lanka needs to do. So whole seat of questions have come from different parts of the world. I'm getting, as you know, there are MBA graduates who are in Switzerland. There are some who are based out of Ghana. There is Maldives. There is people in the Middle East, in Dubai. Then we have people joining in from Vietnam and Cambodia. So we have a whole array of people. So one question that's coming in is, you are a brand marketer, is what I have read about you from your younger days before you became a board director of ReckittBenckiser. What is your view of brand Sri Lanka tourism, given that you also was the chair of the tourism cluster of Sri Lanka? As you know that for years we have tried to have a integrated communication campaign, but Sri Lanka has failed. What is your view of Sri Lankan tourism brand strategy?
I think the problem with tourism strategy, Lanka, as you well know, as you had an involvement with it, is we have this conflict with the government and private sector. They're not pulling together. And part of the task of developing tourism was with the government sector. Now, you can't expect government servants to perform the job. That, in my view, was a big failing. That the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority was a government agency. It should have been the responsibility of the private sector. The marketeers are in the private sector. That's where the private sector thinking comes in. But that wasn't allowed to be the driving force. Now, as a proposition, we have a wonderful proposition. A lot of the world want to go onto the beach. This is, if you look at the whole of Europe, people go to the beach, something very attractive. People in the middle of Europe haven't seen a beach. People in the middle of India haven't seen the sea. Large parts of China haven't seen the sea. So we have a great opportunity of marketing our sea, marketing the sea, the beach, that area we have. In addition, as a sort of additional thing, we have lots of other attractions, cultural, ancient cities, religions, and what have you. So in my view, the thrust should be on what people want to see, the beach, the sea. And there's a huge market for it. And we have the opportunity to do that in the West Coast and we can do the East Coast. So that should be the principal thrust. But in addition, there are lots of other attractions. I don't think we can pioneer with these other attractions. I think the main attraction should be the beach and the sea.
Thank you, sir. There is a question coming up on investment. And the question is that while Sri Lanka is looking at investment into Sri Lanka as we speak right now, when you have a tax regime which is coming at 30% plus for corporates, how could we attract investment into Sri Lanka when there is no continuity of policy?
Now, when you bring investment, we have the BOI and they have a lot of space about what the provisions they can be. So the thought of investment makes me cough. So the basic thing is there is no reason why people should come and invest in Sri Lanka. So we don't have any particular advantages over our neighboring countries. Okay. Plus, we have the added burden that the country is being corrupt. So I think inward investment is going to be very tough, whatever the rates of tax are. But if there is some major proposition, the tax rates can be negotiated. They can have tax holidays. The BOI has enormous powers to negotiate the terms on which people invest. So major investors don't be worried about the 30% or whatever it is. That's the current for people here. But other people have their tax holidays, and those are being honored, and nobody's changing any of the rules that apply.
A question coming from Lasanta. He's a professional agricultural expert, MBA graduate from Staffordshire University, and very interesting question. He's saying, don't you feel that the private sector is responsible for today's situation? Because as against the Indian private sector, who is very vocal, Sri Lankan private sector does not voice their concerns just like other private sector entities do in other countries, which is one reason as to why the politicians take the upper hand. Your view?
I think they're quite right. In fact, I got an article going on my computer right now asking the question, why is the big private sector silent on big issues, right? They make kind of pompous statements on the budget or something like that, but they're not getting involved in the key issues, right? On any key issue. The private sector is not saying in loud, clear voice, the PTA must be banned. They're not saying that. They're not really saying anything about corruption. So I was wondering why this is, and you were asking why is the difference between the Indian and the Sri Lankan. And I was scratching my head, and I thought perhaps one of the reasons is some of the pioneers of the private sector, the big people there, are now getting on in years, getting on in years. Some of the big players are probably reaching the 80s. Mr. Dilma, Mr. Fernando is 90. Harry Ravarma is 80. So this is the problem. I think we have an aging leadership in the private sector, and a more dynamic younger generations have not taken over. And all they're doing is focusing on running their businesses, and they're not playing their wider role in society. But the comment is very valid. They are not saying anything about anything. They haven't even said that we should do away with the Prevention of Terrorism Act. They're not making any comment. They're not putting any pressure. If I was leading private sector in the private sector, I would say you should do this. If you don't do this, we won't pay tax. That's the biggest threat they can make. That if they're not going to be responsive, that we threaten not to pay tax. Of course, we'll pay the tax, but at least it will make them sit up and think that there are people who can actually have some impact on the activities of the government.
So, I love the questions that these guys are asking. It's Hansani, a lady who runs IT, and she's saying, since you live in the UK now, because you all your life virtually worked in one of the top multinationals like ReckittBenckiser, we saw that in the UK, when the wrong policy was followed, everybody resigned, including the Prime Minister. Whilst in Sri Lanka, we don't see that kind of governance in place. What is your view?
That's an interesting question. Now, the rules are different. The rules are different. Rishi Sunak resigned as Chancellor of the Exchequer on principle because he said the Prime Minister was dishonest in denying these parties. So on principle, he said, I can't serve in a government where the Prime Minister is not honest. Now, we can't dream of this happening here. That's the difference. That's the difference. So when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, and this is it, interesting. Liz Truss in the campaign, and they debated this, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss and Claire Morgan, said, I will do two things. But that was her manifesto. Then when she was Prime Minister, she found it not possible to do those things. So she said, because I can't deliver the promises I made when I was elected Prime Minister, I'm resigning. Now, this is very high quality behavior. Now, that sort of behavior doesn't sort of exist here, unfortunately. Those standards are very different. Those standards, but we got to build towards doing that. I don't think any member of the cabinet who loves being in the cabinet would resign on the grounds that some little thing that the Prime Minister was dishonest and denying something. No. Those politics and our politics are very different.
So I don't know how these guys get information about you. It's Dhanushka. He's saying that when you were chairman of BOI, you were also appointed to look after the IMF. You were, I think, overlooking that whole partnerships when we had applied for an IMF loan. I don't know whether that's correct, but that's what he says. Can you tell us whether we really can access IMF now?
Yeah, I had many roles. I was also a senior advisor to the Ministry of Finance, okay? And I worked very closely with the Secretary to the Treasury, Dr. Jayachandra, right? So in my role in the Ministry of Finance, we had to go to the IMF. We need the IMF. And we divided the responsibilities. The IMF sends lots of bright young economists, right, very theoretical. And you have to argue the theoretical, why theoretically we should do this, that, and the other. So P.B. Johnson was a very competent economist, dealt with these bright young people and were debating economic theory. A lot of it is highfalutin theory. So you got to debate it with them. You've got to talk their language, get their respect. My job was to liaise with the head of the IMF, build up a relationship, get him to have confidence in us, and tell him that there are certain things we can do as a country and there are certain things we cannot do as a country. So don't apply conditions which we cannot deliver for very good reasons. One of the big things with subsidies is it can't remove subsidies because people will starve. So please don't make that a condition to remove subsidies. So it worked. We got loans. We didn't have very onerous conditions, and it worked. And that's the way it works. You have to have relationships with the IMF. See, the IMF are people. I mean, they haven't come here to punish us. I mean, they are doing a job. Money doesn't come out of their pocket. There's funds available to them to look at the needs of countries and provide them. We have to convince them that we deserve to be heard. That's why I said in a speech, we have to create this image that we have a new outlook in life. There are new people, we're stopping corruption, we are following the rule of law, we respect human resources. All of that is very important to get a tick as good boys.
So Gabriel is asking you, he's a hotelier, he's asking, currently we are looking at tourism coming to Sri Lanka, but we also know that there is a recession hitting, and it's going to have an impact mainly in Europe and the US. Given that you're a Cambridge grad and also from Harvard, from a macro end, are we faced with a double whammy?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understood the question.
I think he's asking, sir, whether the recession hitting Europe and the US is also going to have a huge impact about us also having a negative image globally in towards actually attracting tourism into Sri Lanka.
I mean, the recession in the UK will affect all sorts of activities, but I don't think we have a situation where people are saying we won't go on holiday. I mean, people will go on holiday. They might go to less expensive places and more expensive places. So you might find in selection that will come, people might come and not stay in 5-star hotel, they might stay in 3-star hotel. So I don't think the recession in Europe, I haven't seen any signs to suggest that there's been a great downturn in tourism. Now, COVID is behind us. So during COVID, there was complete chaos and people were frightened about going and getting COVID. Now, in the UK, nobody worries about COVID. They're not wearing masks. And COVID is like flu. Even I got COVID when I was in England recently. I was to recover in a week. And therefore, for the fear of COVID, people didn't go out, but now that doesn't apply. So people will travel and they will continue to travel and they will go and select the travel destinations that they wish to go. And if we have a good tourism product to offer, people will come. That's amazing. And what I'm arguing is we have a wonderful product to offer. We have, sun and sand as good as anybody else. And there's no reason. Look at the West Indies. They have nothing but sun and sand. Take any of the thousands of millions of people going to the West Indies, just sun and sand. There's nothing else. There's not even an old broken down building to show the historic ruin. People are not going there. They're just enjoying sun and sand. So they can do that here. And we can do this on the West Coast, we can do the East Coast. So we have a wonderful opportunity to sell sun and sand, and that's what people want.
There's a question from Imesh, MBA grad, studying second year. And he's saying, you're talking about new elections. If election is not held, does it mean that we will have a huge impact with regard to attracting investment into Sri Lanka, and also the IMF loan, and of course, in terms of actual recovery?
You see, the people who have been running the country now put us in this crisis. Who put us in this crisis? We didn't have some outside agent that created this crisis. The crisis was created by the politicians who ran the country. You can't get away from it. And so if you want to build confidence, you've got to say, look, we've got a new team of people. Why did these people get us in this mess? Largely, some of it was corruption, some of it is incompetence, right? So there is no confidence. Even the people here have no confidence that they'll get us out of the crisis because they put us in the crisis and start with. Okay. Why didn't they manage their foreign exchange better? Why didn't we go to the IMF much earlier? Why did, when in the time that we're desperately short of foreign exchange, why did Cabral go and redeem a sovereign bond? We redeemed the sovereign bond and people had no food to eat because of short of foreign exchange. So we had a completely chaotic political background. So if you give the marks out of 10, they will get very low marks. And that's fact. We didn't have a political leadership that would have addressed these issues before they happen. You see, when you have a foreign exchange problem looming, you have to manage it carefully. But until a short time ago, we were importing all the big luxury cars. If you go on the road, there are anything but luxury cars. Okay, so all that is foreign exchange going on. Long before, we should have said, no, you can't have luxury cars, tax them at unbelievable rates. Everybody could have modest cars. I mean, Singapore did that a long time ago. They made it impossible for people to have luxury cars at impossible tax. So people are compelled to have small cars. You save money, right? Now, we didn't do any of these things because we had no foresight. We didn't have a good leadership.
The question is from Tivanka. He's saying, has any country in the world been able to recover the stolen assets? Because if you look at our stolen assets, stolen money, that can actually, we don't have to go in for taxing people. What is your view?
Well, firstly, we have to assume that people have stolen money. And then we have to assume they put them in a bank somewhere. There is no known method of getting hold of that money and bringing it in. And that's the pipe dream. You can't do that. You know. If I have stolen money and put in a bank, there's no known method whereby the government of Sri Lanka can get that money and bring it here. There's no way we can do that. We can only speculate that people have stolen, but we can't prove it. We might say they've taken commissions, but we can't prove it. There's no proof. Only circumstantial evidence. But circumstantial evidence does not enable us to really put somebody in jail. You have to come at it in a different way. I think we should have declaration of assets made public, right? From the time the Rajapaksas or anybody else entered parliament, from that time onwards, we should have published the declaration of assets year by year, right? So people know what the assets are. And they should all give a letter to any bank saying, if I have any funds with you, please give the details to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. A letter, each one signs a letter. So that way I come clean, here are my assets, and I'm giving letters to any bank to whom it may concern, saying, if I have any assets come deposits with you, please notify the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Now that way you might have some access to assets, if people will do that. But unless you need a very strong commitment to eliminate this problem. And that's why we need a new set of people who are clean, who have not taken money, who are competent to come in to rule the country. And they can only go and do this through a new election.
Isurinda, again, a first-year grad from MBA is asking a very interesting question. He's saying, you are a successful global CEO, and you also have experience of being a chairman of BOI, and of course, one of the largest private or financial driven organizations like SLT. If you were asked to be the prime ministers of Sri Lanka, would you take that challenge?
I can't be prime minister of Sri Lanka. I'm not a politician.
But sir,
that is reserved for a politician. To become prime minister, you have to come through a political party. There's no scope for somebody outside the system. But there is in this way. Ranil Wickremesinghe was not elected to parliament, but he came as a nominated member and thereby became president. Of course, there is that route as well.
I think the question, sir, is a little bit more depth, because I think what he's asking is, like, shouldn't people of your caliber get into driving this country because it's right now in like absolute chaos? I think that's what I'm reading from this question.
Rohanta, there are people like me who do that. After my period in the UK, I came back to Sri Lanka, and for 7 years I worked free for the government of Sri Lanka, trying to help the country. So I came to SLT in complete disarray. The Japanese were not getting on with us. The trade unions were not getting on with anybody else, and telecommunication was vital. So Chandrika Bandaranaike pleaded with me to come and take over this. That was my first job in Sri Lanka whilst I was still in the UK. She said, I have this big problem and you're about to retire, come and do this. And I took over that role and I did that. We turned it around completely, made it profitable. We sorted out the industrial unrest and we're running very smoothly. And then what happens? I'll tell you what happens. Then Ranil Wickremesinghe comes and he removes me and appoints a bookie, a bucket shop owner. So that's Sri Lankan politics. Okay. So that was the end of my contribution there. And I was also chairman of the BOI. So I was working for the country, appointed by Chandrika Bandaranaike. And Ranil Wickremesinghe comes and he removes me and brings in his twin, Arjuna Mahendran, who was implicated in the bond scam. So I have been doing my bit as a senior advisor, and we worked and we turned around the Bank of Sri Lanka. We had two things, NCED and SEMA, State Enterprises Management Agency. Right. These are my inputs into which helped to create three things: the procurement agency, a state enterprises management agency, and NCED, of which Johansa was the executive director. Right. So we have made a contribution, and we went and worked in these institutions and worked with NCED and worked with SEMA. So I have done my bit for the country within the scope that is available to me. When Mahinda Rajapaksa came in, he did not want any input or support from me. So then I switched over to working entirely with the private sector of Sri Lanka and ceased to have a contact working for the government, and not because of lack of interest. I did that for 7 years. I didn't take a cent. I didn't take a car. I didn't take an entertainment allowance. I took nothing, absolutely free. And I paid for my passage up and down to go up and down. So the answer, yes, I have done my bit for the country.
So Husni is asking you, given that, I mean, you're one of the most successful CEOs sitting in a top 100 company, what is your sincere advice to us who is studying for masters and we are expecting to move up the corporate career? What is your sincere advice to us?
Well, in whatever discipline, you must understand the discipline properly. If you're an accountant or financial, you must understand that. If you're a marketer, you must understand your marketing. So because you go up the ladder through some discipline, right? So you go up the ladder either as an IT specialist, or you go up the ladder through financial management, or you go up the ladder through marketing. So you go up the ladder through one of those things. and then the company will give you broader responsibilities from there. So through all of this, you move into general management. So general management doesn't have to be a marketeer, or it doesn't have to be a business graduate. You can come into general management from anywhere. As a company, we have to look for management for the next 30 years. We're looking all the time, planning ahead. And we find people who have leadership qualities, right? You don't need to have that particular skill bit, because when you become a general manager of a company, you're a general manager, you're managing the whole thing. You're no longer a marketeer or an accountant or production manager or IT guy. You're not, you are on top of the pile. But you can get to the top of the pile through any of these by showing leadership qualities and having a breadth of understanding of the whole business. So that's the part. I mean, I started off as a marketing manager in Sri Lanka, and a British company, and always a managing director was a Brit in this company. So I became the first Sri Lankan head of Reckitt in Sri Lanka. And around the world, all the foreign companies have foreign heads. So Reckitt had foreigners in all their companies, like here. And I became the first head of this company. That before they appointed me, they said, okay, you're doing very well here. We must see how you work in a different environment. And they gave me a very rigid test. They said, go and work in a company in Brazil. Then they said, the language of operation in that company is Portuguese. So they said, we'll send you to Berlitz to do what they call a total immersion course for 8 weeks. You learn Portuguese and go to the business and work in Portuguese in that business as a member of the board of directors. And having passed that test, they said, right, you passed the test. Now we'll appoint you as managing director of Sri Lanka. So that's how it works.
Thank you very much, sir. I mean, it's really fantastic. So it's exactly 7:08, sir. I promised you that it will be below an hour, and I want to thank you sincerely for coming over and spending time with the youngsters, the people who are yet having hope on Sri Lanka. And I would like to invite Shiranas, who is actually one of our who heads a local degree and a very eminent lecturer, to hand over replica for your presence today. And Shiranas, are you there?
She rushed off somewhere. She said,
okay. So thank you very much. It's been absolutely wonderful listening to you and hearing you, and I hope you will spend more time in Sri Lanka. I know that you love Sri Lanka and you're right now based in Sri Lanka, but your home is in the UK. It's actually wonderful to hear the key thoughts, and I like your very simple answer as to how you want to give a summary of what you need to do, which is number one was about saying that you need to have elections, and without elections, there is no hope in terms of having a new management team. A very, very beautiful way in which you grasp the situation at hand. Number two, you talked about how tourism can actually help us to ease most of our burden and have money to basically run our country. And thirdly, of course, is that you very rightly said that who was responsible for this debacle, and also asking yourself as to how you're going to get out of this. So, I mean, that brilliant key thoughts.
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Was it okay?
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, lovely. Did it go okay?
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Indeed. Thank you, Dr. Rohantha, for just being there. And then thank you so much, sir. It was such an honor to be connecting with you today, where new students are starting their new chapter with their postgraduate opportunity. And we are honored to be having you. At the same time, we are honored that we could provide this opportunity for the students who are starting their new chapter as well. So with that, we come to the end of the webinar, and all the other distinguished guests, our existing students, thank you very much for joining us today. We would like to say good night to you and end this inaugural session for the day, for today. I also have a message for the new students. So please take a break, and we will continue your academic orientation for another few hours, because this is your very first day that you will be having your introductions and getting to know all the other sessions. So we will meet back again. New students, we will meet back again in the MS Teams, our official APIT academic platform, for you to continue the academic orientation. And the other members and other guests, we will meet you back again in another week's time. So until then, do take care and good night from APIT.